Pipe Network presents.
On this episode of Season 4, Let's Talk. Folks, welcome to the first ever 50th episode of the series, of the Let's Talk series, and I'm excited to share with you one of my most favorite musicians on YouTube, and this is going to be a fun conversation. I hope you will enjoy it. Cheers. Hey folks, welcome back to the Rajiv Show, and I'm your host Rajiv Doreswamy, and this show aims to help reach out to those who are currently struggling in life and to remind you that life is indeed beautiful when you're inspired to make it your own. Before we get into this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to whichever platform you are using. And if you want to connect with me, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok at The Rajiv Show. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of The Rajiv Show. And my mind is blown right now because I'm having a conversation with one of the most legendary musicians that I've met online. And we've connected via Instagram. And I managed to get him here on my show. And I do not know how much more I may introduce him. I might take half of this episode to introduce him. But a short background on how I met him is, of course, on YouTube. If you guys go to YouTube and check out Robert Dimbleby, No Pressure, check it out. And yeah, and I'm here with the composer of the album Change of Scene. Folks, ladies and gentlemen, Robert Dimbleby. Hey pal, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I mean, this is such a huge honor to have you on my show and to have a conversation with you. And this is beyond my my I don't know, beyond emotions right now. I'm so mixed emotions right now. I'm just fangasming right now. Yeah. So how are you, pal? How are you doing? How are things over there?
Yeah, good. So I recently broke up from school. I'm a maths teacher part time. That's what I do to earn my wicked way in the world. And we just finished for summer, so I've got about 3 months off now. And in September, I'm going to start a jazz course in London, which I'm really excited about. So I'm going to really try and make it go.
Wow.
So this summer, I'm just practicing as much as I can, finishing off some songs, seeing my family again after lockdown, which is really nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, all good.
Amazing. I gotta say, some of my listeners are looking forward to finding out who you are, of course. Could you give a little bit of background about yourself, aside from the grand introduction that I've given you?
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess I'm a musician. I could call myself that. I'm trying to be a musician. I started playing the piano when I was about 6, I think. And I started having piano lessons, classical piano lessons, which I had for about 11 years. But I kind of got into boogie woogie and blues, mainly through my dad. And that's kind of like always been my main interest. And then kind of gradually as I've got older, I've got more into jazz and kind of less blues and boogie woogie like I was when I was younger. And yeah, I'm just trying to kind of figure out the kind of music that I want to make. I've just been experimenting with kind of different styles for the past few years. I've released 3 albums that I've composed and recorded myself in my bedroom here at my parents' house, which is where I am at the moment. I'll be staying here for a few weeks. and yeah, since then, so the last album I released was Change of Scene, which is 2016.
Yeah.
And
Big
since then,
fan
I
of that.
studied maths at university. Yeah, I studied maths at university and kind of involved myself in as much music whilst at uni as I could. And then since graduating, I've just kind of really been thinking that I want to pursue music. So then the past few years, I've just really been practicing as much piano as possible, transcribing loads of jazz, and yeah, now I'm looking forward to this September finally going to study jazz properly and hopefully make a thing of it. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Interesting. You've unboxed a lot of stuff, teaching maths and jazz.
Yeah.
The fact that you've opened Change of Scene, in the back of my head, ever since I wanted to have you on my show, I wanted to have you on my conversation, put that in the conversation, and we're gonna highlight that, and I'm excited. Before we open this different Pandora's box that you've laid out, of course, I gotta ask, if you and I were classmates in high school, who were you in high school? Are you the silent type, introverted, or the extroverted, or the sporty type, or the guy with the girls? If you and I were in high school, yeah, I just want to know you. Yeah, yeah.
That's a good question, actually. So when I was at school, I was pretty I was kind of like quite cheeky in class, as in like I'd talk quite a lot and like crack jokes at the back of the classroom and stuff. But I think the teachers kind of liked me because I did get on with my work, but I just kind of like I just enjoyed cracking jokes and kind of the attention a little bit. So yeah, I had a lot of fun at school. It was really good. I was quite sporty. I did actually get the school record for the most number of PP uppies. I got 156, and yeah, I don't know if I still have it, but back in the day, that must have been like 2010 or something. Got the school record, so yeah. And then yeah, I think I had quite a nice big friend group, and it's quite green where I grew up, so we used to just go and hang out and have picnics and stuff at lunchtime. Yeah, I enjoyed school. It was a good time.
Interesting. One thing that I'm specifically enjoying here in this conversation is I don't know, the past few days I've been binge watching on the show called Peaky Blinders, and I gotta admire your accent. And I learned that language is in Peaky Blinders is Brahmi,
Right.
and I really love your accent. May I know what your accent is? Because I'm trying to figure out and learn more about UK or London accents. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've got a Derbyshire accent, which is kind of in the Midlands. It's it's like a few hours, maybe like 2 hours drive north of London. So people consider it to be the north. If you're from London or kind of the south, people think of Derbyshire as being the north. But it's really the Midlands. It's like just south of Yorkshire, which is where the north really starts, and you get really thick accents. But to be honest, I've got quite a weak accent now because I went to uni in the south, and just from hanging out with so many southern people, I think I've lost a lot of my Derbyshire accent. But hopefully, if I'm at home with my parents the next month or so, I'm planning on trying to revive my Derbyshire accent a little bit.
So I've learned that in some of these interviews that when certain people, especially actors, I've seen a couple of interviews where I'm sorry we've taken this conversation into accent instead of music, but we'll get into the music part.
I love Derbyshire as well, so I'm happy to talk about it.
Yeah. My fascination between accents is that I don't know. To me, I find it fascinating. I've been watching Peaky Blinders. I'm sure you've seen the show around. 9 out of 10 cats does countdown.
Uh,
But yeah,
oh yeah, is that like a panel show with comedians on it?
yeah, that one with Jimmy Carr, and I've been watching them on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
And one of those shows, there are a
Right.
lot of these shows where some certain people, they're losing their accent because once they start acting or they cross the threshold of going to another country to do the job as an actor or actress, once they get into the big Hollywood stuff, they lose their accent. And I kind of realized that even in England, if when you shift from one area to the other area, you tend to lose your accents faster. And this is new to me, to be honest. I just learned this, so this is really interesting.
Yeah, it does tend to happen. It's quite strange. I think I don't know. I wonder if it's just because in England we have so many different accents, and the UK in general, actually, like Scotland and Wales.
Huh.
There's like so many different accents in such a small area. So you can travel 2 hours by car, and you'll have a completely different accent.
Interesting.
From where you started. So I wonder if that just kind of means that you end up changing your accent quite a lot because you're exposed to so many different accents. You end up kind of absorbing all of them.
Interesting.
And having sort of a strange mix of all the different accents that you've been part of over the years.
I gotta ask though, for me personally, one thing that I want to share is that, especially with accents, is that for those who know me, I'm half Filipino and I'm half Indian, and I've spent a large of half my life here in the Philippines, and I've never had an accent because I grew up here, and it's mostly the Filipino main dialect, and yeah, in our area, it's especially in our household, we have a specific language, and then aside from that, English, and then that's two languages that is predominant. And then when I went to India around 2005, of course, I was influenced by slight influence of British, not specifying any accent from the British accent, but it's a mixture of Indian tonality. I don't know if it makes sense, and it has a very certain thing. And it's really fascinating when I was there and I was exposed to the culture and the influence. For me personally, I've learned the learning the accent is all about hearing and learning and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But when I came back, people noticed that I had an accent, and it's
Yeah.
pretty interesting. I gotta ask, in your case, since you mentioned high school, was it a possibility that you went to the mainland, and then you were associated with a lot of accents and a lot of these people, and somehow the environment got into you, something like that?
You mean when I went to university in the south? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
yeah. I think so because if you just kind of spend a lot of time with people that aren't from where you grew up, you just kind of end up losing your accent a little bit, I think. And because most of the people at uni had southern accents, you just kind of end up speaking like them a little bit.
If
I don't
may
really
ask,
know why that is.
if I may ask, what's when you meant southern accent, what's the prime definition of a southern accent? What is that main? If you go to south, what is the main sound? In my case, here in the Philippines, here we've got a lot of cultures and we got a lot of stuff. And here in the main island called Luzon, it's a big island, of course, and we're inside where we are located. We are in the areas close to the mountain.
Right.
So where we grew up, it's more of the people live here, people speak Ibaloy, and you know, these languages have lived through generations and generations, although with the modernization, of course, of the language, it's starting to fade away.
Right.
English is becoming, it's starting to take over.
Oh,
And with the
really?
educational system, yeah,
Hmm.
American English is getting there. So
Oh, that's
from,
good.
sorry.
No, that's interesting that it's American English that is kind of becoming the predominant thing.
Yeah. A little bit of history is that during our a small history of our country is that during the earlier years the first conquerors who came and took over our country was the Spanish. Before that, we had separate unions of provinces and regions, and and the south they had their own thing, north they had their own stuff. Everybody had their own provinces, and then the Spanish came in, and then they conquered. They
Hmm.
conquered the Philippines for 333 years. And then after that, they decided to sell. It's funny, they decided to sell Philippines to the Americans.
Wow.
And at that time, the Filipino wanted independence, which was apparently promised. But then, in the deal, there was a deal that happened where Spanish and American made the deal, and they had to make a mock battle and all that stuff. Yeah, and I don't want to get into details with that.
I need to take notes. My history is terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. So so from then on out, the Americans took over, and then once the Americans took over, they established a laws and everything, all this stuff that we are living with now. And after that we gain our independence after a certain year. It's just in a nutshell what I'm sharing with you.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah. So we have the influence of American even after they left us. So we still have the American stuff. Coming back to dialects. Coming back to Ibaloy and Ilocano. Ilocanos are people from the northern eastern area, which is the Ilocos area. That's why it goes by the name Ilocos, where the Ilocano
Right.
people are. And going to the central area, if you Google that in Google Maps, that's
Mhm.
probably Manila. That is where the heart of the Filipino language is. So majority of the languages are split based on where they are. In India, that's another story. Probably we'll talk about that in the end of this recording or so.
Nice.
And
Sounds good.
and so each area has its own thing. Here and where I live, here in Trinidad, is Ibaloy. My grandfather, my grandmother, they came here with the tribe and their language, and that's how the generation of their communication has been here. The Ilocos thing was actually when I asked my grandfather, it was more of a thing in the neighborhood. Everybody in the neighborhood spoke Ilocano, and then it became a household thing for us, and so that became something like a household language for us. So that's a little bit of language
Of course.
exposure
Yeah,
on my
and
end.
thanks for
Yeah.
sharing.
And the history is a little bit anyway, coming back into the main meat and the sauce of this conversation, we completely diverge, and that is music. um I noticed that here in my notepad that you teach maths,
Yeah.
and the funny thing about me is that I'm bad in maths.
Really?
So yeah, what got into I gotta ask though, what got you into
Oh, really?
maths? I know it's very typical for an Indian to be good in maths.
Right.
For my case, I'm not that much into it.
Yeah, I
I
don't know
struggle
what.
with it.
Do you? Maybe I can teach you.
Oh man, that would be awesome. That would be awesome.
Yeah,
So,
I,
yeah.
I don't really know what got me into maths actually. I guess my parents come from quite a kind of mathematical background. So my mum studied computer science at uni,
Mm.
and my dad studied electronic engineering and then went into programming and like software design and stuff.
Mm.
So I think I picked up that sort of interest in like logic and problem solving from them.
Mm.
I don't know. I've always just kind of enjoyed it. Really, I know that a lot of people like maths because of the thought that it kind of explains a lot of things in the world, which is really cool. But like for me, I would still enjoy maths even if it was really useless, because I just think of it as like a puzzle or like a Sudoku. Like that's my motivation for doing it. It's more just because it's like a fun little thing to do, and it's like fun to problem solve, and like you feel good when you solve the problem and stuff. So it's like the same. Yeah, it's like the same reason why someone might do a crossword or a Sudoku or like play chess or just any kind of thing that involves like logic and problem solving, really.
Interesting. I'm sure with maths it has some sort of connection with music and how you understand music, and I'm sure other people are dying to hear this conversation for us to talk about music and in terms of how you understand rhythm.
Yeah, I think so. I would say I get very different things out of maths and music. Like they fill two different purposes, I'd say, for me. So I've never really kind of made much of a conscious connection between the two of them. Although I'm sure it has helped, and I think it's probably helped the most just from a point of view of being able to analyze things, like figuring out, for example, the most efficient way to practice piano and stuff like that, and just being like really analytical and kind of, you know, being able to reflect on like what's useful and what's not useful, because you have to do a lot of that in maths when you're problem solving. So I think that kind of more general stuff has definitely applied to my music, because it's just allowed me to think more logically about how to approach learning music.
Really fascinating. I mean, this is really fascinating stuff, and I like it. I mean, inspirations. Let's get into inspiration before we get into the Change of Scene album. On the second half of our conversation, we're gonna take an in-depth of that conversation. Before we go there, I want to ask you, what is your inspiration when you mentioned that you use maths as a form of a logical understanding towards puts things into a logical perspective, which is an interesting perspective. I've never seen it that way, but that's interesting. And aside from maths being the inspiration, do you have any other elements of inspiration that you add into your musical composition, if you know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, I think that's kind of where maths separates from music, at least for me. Like, ideally, if I'm writing music, the stuff that I enjoy the most is when it just kind of falls out and you don't really have to think about it too much. But then I think the side of it where maths does come into play is like if I'm stuck, if I'm writing a piece of music and I get to a point in the song where I don't really know what comes next, then I think I'm quite good at kind of looking at patterns in other pieces of music and thinking like, oh, they did that could work, or like, oh, I did this a few weeks ago with my other piece of music, maybe I could try and do a similar thing here. So I think I'm quite good at like spotting patterns and stuff like that. But I try to just write music from a kind of cathartic point of view almost. It's like I'm just writing music to kind of to get whatever emotions I've got in me out, sort of thing. And I think when I was first getting into writing music, I just really loved really joyful music, and I still do. So stuff like Oscar Peterson, he was a massive influence on me when I was growing up, and he still is, because he's just so joyful, and his rhythm is so infectious. So any music that had that kind of infectious rhythm, I would love. So I was really into Joe Sample. He's kind of a jazz funk keyboard player. What else was I into? I was really into boogie woogie, so people like Mead Lux Lewis and Albert Ammons and stuff like that. Again, just because of how joyful and rhythmic and infectious it is, you just want to kind of tap your feet to it, you know. So I think growing up, like it was that kind of sentiment that I was really, really into exploring when I was writing my own music. Is just I want to write stuff that's joyful and kind of and feels good to play and to listen to, you know.
Interesting. Jazz and funk. I mean, funk. I can relate to funk because I spent an interesting time in college when I was studying music. It was an interesting time. But I wanna get into this question first that I had in mind. Could you give me a list down of the list of musicians? Of course, definitely our listeners would love to listen to some more new music, and to those aspiring musicians who are listening to our conversation would love to learn and listen to new music that you listen to and gets you into the groove, draw inspiration and stuff like that. Since we were talking about inspiration.
Yeah. I'm gonna open my Spotify playlist because otherwise my mind's gonna go blank and I won't think of anyone. But just while it's loading, so a few off the top, like if it's that kind of joyful feeling that you're going for, which a lot of the time I am when I'm listening to music, then I really, really love Wynton Kelly, the piano player, and he played a lot with Miles Davis. Like on Sunday My Prince Will Come, the album by Miles Davis. And also the album Soul Station by Hank Mobley, that has Wynton Kelly on it as well. And it's just the most, like, his playing is so lively and kind of delicate and just like really, really joyful. It's just so fun to listen to. I really love Mulgrew Miller as well. He's kind of more bluesy and kind of earthy, I guess.
Interesting.
But again, really joyful. Those are kind of more straight ahead jazz people. And then on the funk side, I really like the Meters. They're probably my favorite funk group. So I actually forget the name of the album, but it's the album with the song Loving You Is On My Mind. I think it's also got Cissy Strut on it as well, which is really famous. So yeah, definitely check out the Meters. It just grooves so hard and like really nice simple chord progressions, but it just feels so good and it's really fun to jam along to as well. Trying to think who else. I still really like Snarky Puppy. I don't listen to them as much anymore, or at least at the moment. But I really, really loved them when I was younger, especially Cory Henry, the keyboard player. So I definitely recommend checking out Snarky Puppy if you've not already.
Oh yeah. Especially
Jazzanova.
the work with Jacob Collier. Yeah.
Jacob Collier, yeah, he's great.
He's
awesome.
Beyond great, pal. He's something else.
Yeah, he is. It's true. He's an absolute genius. I really love his more folky stuff. Actually, that's the style of his music that I love the most.
I was introduced to Jacob Collier.
Like Hideaway. I love Hideaway. That's my favorite one.
I was introduced to Collier when he was doing his recording in his room, and when he was creating and composing stuff in his bedroom, where he would make these melodies, and somehow I do not know how he does this with the power of technology, where he brings everything together.
Yeah.
And then there's this thing where in Bleak Midwinter, a lot of people speculating about the story on the fact that, for those who don't know this, is that Jacob Collier in Bleak Midwinter, one of his composition, he transposed his music and his harmony and everything to a G a half. It was something.
Yeah, he modulated into a half sharp.
He modulated or something, yeah.
Crazy.
And yeah, he modulated, and it was so funny. Where these are some technical stuff where we studied in music, but this is in depth and this is like an alien variation or something, which was impossible.
Right.
And this music and the one with Stevie Wonder, that's how I was introduced to him through a friend of mine. I was fascinated when he was playing the bass and stuff like that. And when I saw you play that music, No Pressure, I was like, wow, is this a twin brother or something? So yeah.
Nice.
So coming
I
back
just
to
thought of some
funk, yeah.
some other people as
So
well.
yeah, coming back to funk.
Yeah, on the funk side of things.
Have you heard about the?
Right, go on.
I've noticed this that majority of your influences are from the '60s. These are some good ones actually. Oscar Peterson, all these guys are from the '60s, and wow,
Yeah,
the jive, the groove. I noticed you never had any James Brown, Bootsy, any of those guys.
right. Yeah, I guess I need to get more into James Brown actually, but yeah, I don't know. I've always been more into the kind of I guess James Brown is more like heavier funk.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's more like driving.
I was about to say that.
Whereas the meters are more kind of minimalist, I
Laid
guess.
back.
Yeah, it's more
Laid
laid back, exactly.
Uh,
And I think I've always
Interesting.
gravitated towards that more.
uh,
But yeah, actually, I should mention as well, Stevie Wonder has been a massive influence on me. I love Stevie Wonder.
yeah. September
Herbie
by
Hancock
Earth, Wind,
as
and
well.
Fire. How about these guys?
Yeah, I love Earth, Wind and Fire. Yeah, they're amazing.
And how about Sly and the Family Stone with Larry Graham on the bass, and Larry Graham, of
Larry
course,
Graham, yeah.
on the bass,
Right.
who taught the slapping technique and to the music world. He's more on the heavier side when it comes to the attack, and the way he created it is very
Yeah,
inspirational.
it's amazing.
Wow, we just connected with just inspiration. I don't know how many minutes we've taken out of this.
No, this is cool. There's quite a few
Yeah.
more as well.
Yeah.
I'm just scrolling through my playlist and trying to find people that I've listened to loads. Definitely loads of Herbie Hancock.
Herbie Hancock,
Um,
yeah.
Both his jazzy stuff and his more funky stuff. I've
Collier
really
and
loved.
Hancock, they really work together. They built a friendship.
Yeah, I know, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, but I don't know how they made that
I
friendship
think
though,
Herbie's really good at kind of supporting young people.
because Hancock was working with Miles Davis back then, and he worked, and that's where the inspiration flow came into. And he's got a lot in the bag when it comes to
Yeah,
experiences.
I mean he's the best ever, really. He's
Yeah.
done he's done everything. He's done all
True.
so many different styles and changed directions so often. He's such an inspiration.
And I want to ask though, since we're talking about '60s music, and we're talking about music from the '60s,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on the latest music, like upcoming music? If I may say so, I would love to share my inspirations when I do my majority of my podcasts, and I've mentioned to my guests, I listen to instrumental music to get me to the groove. And to top off is that I'm listening to his album
Oh,
and having conversation with my guest, and I want to share some of the stuff that I've listened to over the years as well.
go for it.
And I've been listening to Tailwinds. Tailwinds is the album. Fearless Flyers.
Oh yeah, I love Fearless Flyers.
And I started diving into Cory Wong, and I love these good guys. And Cory Wong took it to another level when it comes to his music. His music's more aggressive,
Right.
but he's more acoustic. His music is more acousticated, but I don't know if that's a word,
It should be.
but it's a word now.
Yeah.
But he has this acousticated funk, and he minimalizes his stuff, and I'm just inventing words now.
That's a word. Minimize.
He minimalized it, and that's how he creates his music with the aggressive, but he keeps it aggressive and simple and pure acoustic, and it's really interesting. and I've been listening to Lettuce,
Yeah, they're good.
um, Rock Candy Funk Party. I'm sure you've heard of these guys.
Haven't actually.
Um, and um, and then I've been listening to John Batiste as
Oh
well.
yeah,
John
awesome.
Batiste, the guy from the guy who plays piano for what's a talk show?
It's like the Late Show,
American
isn't it? I forget which one.
Stephen
Yeah,
Stephen Colbert. Yeah, Stephen Colbert. Yeah.
that's it. Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I've been listening to him. They collaborated with each other. John Batiste collaborated with Cory Wong. That was interesting. It's funny every time I'm pissed off or anything, or I want to zone out. I just put this album out and I put it on Spotify and I just listen to it, and it's so simple. It's laid back, and it takes you to a very zen place. If we're gonna
Yeah.
talk about this album, it's gonna take an entire series of just talking about this album. That's how good it is.
I need to check that out actually.
And Wolfpack is. I've been listening to Wolfpack. This
Yeah,
is
they're
with
awesome.
Cory Wong as well, working with these big guys, and yeah, but yeah, these are the guys that I've been listening to. Of course, on the pop side, I'm trying to get into the pop side.
Cool.
I must confess, there are some good stuff like Bruno Mars. They're
Oh
coming
yeah,
back
with
into
Anderson
the 60s
Paak.
vibe.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, I've been listening to some of their stuff, but I haven't heard it. I haven't heard that stuff. But I've listened to Finesse, Levitating by Dua Lipa. From the release of that album, they're transitioning back into the 60s. Or I don't know if that's a pattern that you've noticed.
It does
Aside
seem,
from,
yeah,
of
there's
course,
kind of a vintage vibe.
and it's really fascinating, and it's beyond. It's just yeah. To me, it's just a personal observation, and that's my take on the stuff that I listen to. Aside from, of course, my number one December list, which is Robert Dimbleby. I remember. Yeah, that was still shocking. I realized I play your music every time when I create a podcast episode. I gotta admit, and I'm sure I've mentioned this, when I get into a conversation with a podcast or with the guest, I noticed that earlier on I have this ability to, when I'm talking to someone or when I'm talking solo casting, that's fine. I have the ability to get into a certain groove, if I don't know if it makes sense, like having a conversation musically wise.
Yeah.
I get into a certain groove. I sound like a weirdo saying this, but
No, that makes a lot of sense actually.
yeah, but with this certain groove, like with this, like like your songs, No Pressure, Zuberator, they somehow mellows me down in order for me to get into a conversation with my guest. If not for the music, I don't have that groove lying down in the back of my monitor. I don't really talk much. Questions don't really come natural to me. I don't know if it makes sense, but yeah, that's how alien I am, I feel.
That's cool. I guess it's like I don't know. I always think it's nice to have like a photo on your wall of somewhere that's really familiar to you, like around where I grew up. There's a really nice view from the top of the hill. You get like a whole panoramic view of loads of fields and stuff. So, like wherever I am, it's really nice to just have a picture of that, even just like on my phone, and it just kind of like helps you feel more connected again. I guess it's the same thing. Like if you're listening to some music that's really familiar, then you can kind of calm down a bit and collect yourself.
Yeah. And I mean, for some podcasters, to each his own when it comes to their work, and when they get into the groove.
Yeah.
But to me, as a musician, as an artist, I think it's innate that in order for me to create something good, I gotta listen to, or I gotta get into a zone of artistic expression or that cool thing.
Yeah,
It's for yeah.
definitely.
So yeah.
That's awesome.
So before we proceed to our second half, before we dissect change of scene, folks, we're gonna have a short break, and we'll be right back after this few short messages.
Catch the Pizarro Tales weekly as we tackle issues about education and share experiences about teaching. Hosted by Jay Australia, available on your favorite podcast platforms.
Hey folks, welcome back, and welcome back to the 50th episode, of course, of the Rajiv Show. And my guest is the legend Robert Dimbleby, all the way from UK. And the opening of the conversation, we talk about accent, inspiration, music, and now I really want to talk about this from a fan standpoint. I want to talk about change of scene. That's the main reason why I wanted you on my show. I wanted to have this conversation with you because I want to learn your psyche, and also I want to give my interpretation of what I feel when I listen to your album and this feeling that I get from your music, and which is the main reason why I go back to it from time to time.
Mm.
And I gotta ask first, what is the inspiration when you created Change of Scene? I gotta ask.
Oh, funny thing is, for each song, I can think of a specific tune that kind of inspired it. So maybe I can just tell you all the tunes that inspired each song.
I mean, let's do an album thing, because right now,
Oh, cool.
the album of your music is playing here on my monitor. So let's go according to how you designed this thing.
Zuberator first.
Zuberator is the first one. So what is the inspiration behind that?
Oh, I'm trying to. Okay, I think I can't remember very well, but I was listening to this album by Takuya Kuroda, who's a trumpet player, and I forget what the name of the album is. Let me find it. Takuya Kuroda, Rising Sun. That's it. I was listening to a lot of that.
Huh, interesting.
And like the time feel is amazing. It's got Richard Spavin on drums, and it's just so groovy. And I think there was a song on that kind of I was jamming to, and then I just ended up stumbling across the opening piano thing to Zuberator, the dun 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 dun, and then I just kind of took it from there. And then the chorus, I was listening to a lot of Jacob Collier and like trying to work out some of the ways that he changes keys, and I just started experimenting with different like chord changes and stuff that go through different keys. So that's how I came up with the chorus. And also Zuberator is the first word that my sister ever said.
Oh,
even though it's not a word. She just apparently she just started calling things a Zuberator, and it's just kind of stuck in the family. It's become like a little running joke. So that's why I called it Zuberator.
So
no pressure.
I want to share what I see in each song. I hope you don't mind if I share my thoughts as well on each song.
Cool.
So
yeah, let's do it.
Zuberator.
Well.
So Zuberator, the opening is just amazing. The way I see it is that whenever I listen to it, it's like I'm opening into this world that you've come together, and I'm proud of the fact that you put this in the beginning, because the way I visualize it is that the way it you're entering into this universe. So basically, it's like you're in the as you're entering a giant gate. That's how I see, and it's a gate into a world which is gonna take you. And I don't know how I'm gonna say it, but it's like I'm entering into your world.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's kind of how I wanted it to sound as well.
And to put it in the opening is like, wow, that means this is gonna be a great album. This is gonna be an interesting, great album. So yeah. So
right.
So yeah. And
Yeah, it's a good kind of lively one to start.
and that that's my initial thought. Let's keep it short and quick since you mentioned. So no
Yeah, yeah.
pressure, my
No
favorite.
pressure. Was definitely inspired by listening to loads of D'Angelo, because I think when I wrote that, the Black Messiah album had just come out, and I was just listening to that loads, and I loved the feel and just like the different textures. There's like loads of little instrumental improvisation things going on in that album all the time. So yeah, and then "Betray My Heart" is definitely the song that I took the most inspiration from, just in terms of the feel. There's like a breakdown in that song that just like really hooked me, and I wanted to have a song that felt a bit like that. So yeah, that's No Pressure.
Interesting. No pressure. One of my favorites. One of my top one on my December's 2020 Spotify. No pressure, of course.
Nice.
Funky. It took me back to the 60s, and from
Really?
2020, it was like my anti-anxiety pill. I don't know if it makes
okay.
sense. I had anxiety, I had depression,
Right.
and every time I listen to this stuff, it calms me down. That's the simplest thing that I've
That's so
thing
cool.
with. Yeah. So yeah. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, I've kind of I've like struggled with similar things, you know, over the past like few years. Kind of like since halfway through university, I've like, you know, had on and off anxiety and stuff. It's been pretty much fine in the past few years. But it's funny because this album I wrote pretty much before I started having any kind of like mental health sort of problems. So it's just funny to like look back because they all sound so just like innately joyful and kind of like childlike, but in kind of an endearing way. I think like I look back at it fondly and I'm like, oh, they're just like really good feeling music, and it's kind of nice to look back in that sense.
And
yeah, and then Nice Place.
yeah, nice
Sorry,
place.
Raj, you've gone.
Yeah, yeah, nice place. Go ahead. Let's just go rapid on this one.
Yeah, there's a particular song. There's a guitarist called something Christiansen, and I can't even remember his name, which is really bad. It's Steven Christiansen. Let me just have a really quick look
Sure.
in my thing. Christian. Oh yeah, Cory Christiansen. There's a song called "Dying Californian." It's like the only song of his that I've ever listened to, but I just really liked the melody on it and the kind of the feel, and I think that inspired Nice Place. Yeah, that's pretty much it for that one.
As we speak right now, every single number that we're talking about is playing in my head, so I could give you a visual idea of what I'm thinking. When I hear Nice Place, it's like I'm in this peaceful grassland kind of setting, close to the ocean, breeze would blowing through my hair, and that's how I see it. So
That's
next,
cool. Yeah, it's similar vibe.
Glider.
Yeah, Glider. Oh, yeah, I called it Glider because at the time I wrote it, I went to visit my family. I've got some family in Spain, and they live near basically like the paragliding capital of Europe. It's like a really high up point on the mountain.
Interesting.
And you can go up there and just watch like paragliders take off, and it's amazing. So that's why I called it Glider. And then as far as the music of it goes, the song "Everybody Loves the Sunshine," but the version off that Takuya Kuroda album that I mentioned, the opening chords to that I was jamming along with, and then it kind of morphed into the opening bit for Glider. And I knew that I wanted to write a song in like a 3 feel time, or like 6/8 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I
noticed the feel was off was in this one.
Yeah,
Somehow.
yeah.
Very genius.
It's like 6/8 or something.
Yeah.
Depends how you look at it.
The way I hear gliders, the way I see this is that on the technical sense, when I was listening to it for the first time, when you get into the chorus part, the melody somehow, it feels like it's taking you to this in this journey, like I'm traveling from one mountain to the
Oh,
other.
that's
I'm
cool. I've actually
gliding,
never
like,
thought of that.
you
But
know. Yeah. But the way I feel is like I'm descending from one mountain to the other mountain, and that
right.
descending feeling is got that feel, and
That's so cool.
especially when it goes to that chorus.
Mm.
Dun, 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 dun. It's
Right.
I'm listening to it, so it has that
That's
going
so cool.
descending kind of feel, and the way I
Yeah, I've
feel it.
never made the connection there with a glider, but yeah, I see that.
Yeah, and yeah, it's very genius. The way you wrote it is very
Oh, thank
very
you.
genius.
That's really cool.
Like I said, like there's so many things that I like to dissect in this conversation. Next one, what is it?
What is it? I should have put a question mark there, shouldn't I? But anyway. Yeah, so I was listening to a lot of Alan Hinds, who's a guitar player, particularly the album, what's it called? Falling Up. Is it Falling Up? No, it's not Falling Up. Let me just check what it's called again. The album is called Fact of the Matter, and also Monkeys and Slides by Alan Hinds as well. I really loved his guitar tone and like his really melodic approach to soloing, and I love his harmony as well. It's kind of, it like subtly moves through different keys, but you don't really notice. It just kind of feels quite floaty. So that's what I wanted the harmony in What Is It to sound like. I was also listening to a lot of Erykah Badu, and she does a lot of these key changes between minor thirds that I was really getting into. So that kind of inspired the verse, if you want to call it a verse, I guess, for that tune.
In What Is It, somehow there's a minor connection to me towards the song, towards the piece, because the piece has some kind of, for me it doesn't have a connection, to be
Okay.
honest. But I love it though. I mean, it has that driving force towards the story. It pushes the story forward as you journey along with the
Right.
album, and you're moving forward, and you're still in that journey, and each build up goes in towards some certain direction, which is pushing towards the next. So yeah, and that is what I feel when I hear
Yeah.
the song.
I probably agree. It's not very like, it's not a defining moment, but it's more just kind of like pushing you forwards a little bit. Yeah, I think I quite like the chorus. That's probably my favorite bit of that song, and I kind of built the whole song around that. So it kind of builds up to it. It's also the last song that I wrote for the album. So, and I
Interesting.
thought that I wrote Looking Glass, and I was like, okay, that's going to be the last one. But then I was just really enjoying listening to it. I was like, oh, I'll just write one more, and then I wrote What Is It, and that went on it. So
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So next, Written in the Bars.
oh yeah, Written in the Bars. So for that, I was checking out this YouTube video of Corey Henry and Michael League jamming at this like masterclass that they did.
Oh,
It's just bass and
Interesting.
keys,
Oh.
and they play a version of I think they played
Is
Yesterday.
it the one with
by the
Is it the one with Nord, where they were jamming?
No. Oh yeah,
No,
it's
no.
Yesterday. Corey Henry and Michael League, Yesterday. If you type that in, it'll
Okay.
come up. But
Alright.
actually, there's a bigger video where they play loads of other tunes that I was just listening to on repeat. And I just love the feel of it. Like they're interacting so well together, and it's just, it transports you into a whole world. And yeah, that's kind of where that came from. It's pretty much, the whole thing was just improvised. I kind of had the rough structure in mind, but like the melody, a lot of the melody was improvised, and
Interesting.
a lot of the bridge section was improvised, and the structure was improvised as well.
Wow.
I remember trying to include a lot of left-hand stuff because, again, that video with Michael League on bass, I kind of wanted some interesting left-hand things going on, so I was experimenting with that a bit.
Interesting. For me, as I'm listening to this is like a conversation between two folks on a cafe or wherever,
Cool.
and they're just going one on one at it. They're just sharing thoughts, story about sadness,
Mm.
and then the way I hear it is that the sentences are in a musical lyrical form. As the conversation rises, it has that flow that it goes up and then descends, and it has that flow
Yeah.
and descending kind of
Right.
feel. And they're trying to convince each other towards what they're trying to say, and they're trying to say it back. And that's like the conversation continues, and that's funny. And there's then the organ comes into the conversation. It's like another person that comes into the conversation, and that's the
That's
way
cool.
I hear it.
Yeah, it definitely felt like that when I was playing it, actually, thinking back. It just felt like I was kind of, just trying to go off the moment sort of thing.
And I don't know how to pronounce the next one.
Oh, yeah, Christiansen Breakdown.
Okay, Kurganin Breakdown. I don't want to offend the song, so I wanted to make sure that you said it
Breakdown.
before. So
Yeah, the title behind that has a really interesting story, actually. So we went on a family holiday in Wales
Oh.
near the Christiansen Lakes.
Okay.
So it's like a very lakey region of Wales.
Oh.
And it's a really, really steep hill. We were staying in a little cottage, basically halfway up a mountain. And the car broke down, like, as we were pulling into the drive. On our first day of the holiday. So for the rest of the holiday, we had no car. We had to get everywhere by foot. And then we had to get towed back home from Wales, which took about 7 hours. It was like so embarrassing. So that's why it's called Christiansen Breakdown, because the car broke down. And I wrote it in Wales as well on that holiday. I just took my guitar and a little recording station with me and just came up with those chords on guitar and recorded a basic version of it. And then when I got back home, I added drums and bass and piano and stuff.
But what is the meaning of the first name? I don't know if I pronounce it right. Is it Kurganin? Is it a name?
Yeah, Christiansen.
Is that the name of an area?
Yeah. So if you type in Christiansen Lake into Google, it's the name of this collection of lakes in Wales. It's actually where they filmed
interesting.
Merlin, BBC TV show. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
No, not yet.
It's so beautiful. There's
it's
really
interesting.
nice work there.
The way I hear this from, I'm just gonna interweave this from Zuberator to what is it, to Kurganin Breakdown. The storytelling is there, and they're very connected to each other, and I love how the storytelling is building into a huge arc, and it's heading towards a certain direction, especially with the Zuberator as an opening, and then what is it is like pushing me towards that destination, and then and if this was the storytelling, this is where the action happens.
Yeah.
So there's like something happened. This is like the middle of the storytelling and the narrative, and you're in the journey and it's a journey related story, and it happens, and this is where the music goes into the big. It's coming at you like a wave, and you're walking towards that wave. So yeah.
Right.
So
yeah, I was
that's how I
really
hear
into
it.
writing kind of like. Sorry. Yeah. I was really into composing like kind of epic sounding music, or at least trying to. Just like really really tense build-ups, and then like a massive kind of opening in the chorus, and then like a really epic sounding melody and stuff. That's kind of what I was trying to do with that.
And then and of course, change of scene, the album name itself.
Yeah. So there's this album called School of the Arts by School of the Arts. It's like a supergroup. It's got Dave Weckl, John Patitucci, Frank Gambale. It's amazing. It's kind of like folk, jazz, prog. It's really cool. and I was listening to that quite a lot, and that inspired. Actually, that more inspired Christiansen Breakdown than Change of Scene.
Huh.
But then Change of Scene, that was when I first really got into Snarky Puppy. And particularly there was a song called Thing of Gold, which is super cool. It's just like really epic synth solo at the end. It's just like a really nice, feel-good, kind of smooth jazz fusion tune. And I wanted a tune that kind of felt a bit like that. So yeah. Oh yeah, and I was also listening to. Sorry, I keep just thinking of random things.
It's fine.
What's it called? Jason Moran, the jazz pianist. There's an album he did of Fats Waller tributes. It's called All Rise, a joyful elegy for Fats Waller. And there's a version of Jitterbug Waltz on that album that is just so beautiful. And for the chorus with Change of Scene, I took a lot of inspiration from that. And then I just had loads of fun shredding on the synth solo. So yeah.
The way I hear Change of Scene is like you have that interwoven. If you remember, you have that interwoven story where you got the big epic and the whole wave and everything that comes together. Somehow, this has the word defines the word change of scene. It is change of scene.
Right.
If this was a storytelling circle kind of thing, it's like Joseph Campbell's circle of storytelling, where if I'm the protagonist and I'm traveling into your story and into your world, I'm entering through Zuberator, and then of course No Pressure, Nice Place, Glider, and then What Is It, and that pushes me, and then Written in the Bars where I'm sitting in a cafe, and then when something big happens, I don't want to mess up this one, and Kurganen, I hope I said it right, Kurganen, with the epic theme, and then Change of Scene, and where the story unfolds, where it goes back to normal, and that's basically Change of Scene. You've got the words right.
Yeah.
And you really defined it pretty well.
Yeah. That's
the last
one of
one,
the first tunes I wrote for the album as well, actually. I think it was the second tune I wrote.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I wrote Nice Place. It was one of the first ones I wrote, and it was in the first term that I moved to university. So that's kind of why I called the album Change of Scene, because it's like moving from home to university. And that's why the album cover has like buildings from where I went to university, and then there's a little lighthouse thing, which is in this village where I grew up at home. So it's like a mix of different worlds.
Oh wow.
That was kind of the idea.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
This is pretty cool. Looking Glass,
It's
this is the last one.
Right. Yeah. Looking Glass, I wrote when I was kind of like deep in sadness, really, at university. I just kind of like didn't have a particularly good second year at university, and I think when I wrote this, I realized that I needed to take some time off, and then I consequently had a whole year off university before returning again. So yeah, this is like the first song that I kind of wrote where I was like genuinely kind of sad when I wrote it. Like most of my other music, it was written in a pretty joyful place. So I think that's why it sounds a bit kind of like moody and a bit soppy, you know. And yeah, I was listening to a lot of Jason Rebello at the time.
Interesting.
Who was actually, I should have mentioned him before. Actually, he was a massive inspiration to me when I was growing up. And there's an album he did called Anything But Look, spelled Look. I don't think it's even on Spotify. It's probably on YouTube somewhere, or it might even be on SoundCloud. But yeah, there's a song from that called, I think it's the title track, Anything But Look, which I kind of drew inspiration from for the feel of this tune. So yeah.
Just like Glider, this one for me has a narrative story, a visual storytelling. And the way I see this, when I listen to this, every time I listen to this, it's like an end towards something, and it's ending towards a song.
Right.
But the visuals, I hope you'd be there with me in the visuals. The way I hear it is that you're traveling on a pirate ship,
Okay.
and then of course, and you're heading towards a destination, and as the music progresses, it has this soft. You know where you're heading, and you're looking through the looking glass, which is
Mhm.
as a pirate, and it's like you're traveling in the sea, and you're heading towards a direction, and it's like an amazing journey, and then towards the end of it, you're still in the sea, and it's
Yeah.
an amazing feeling, and there you see something from afar where you want to
Right.
head towards that direction, and the way you're pushing the music towards the wave, it's like you're pushing the song to. You have the loud moments and the soft moments, which create the drama effect, and the tonality, and the intention of the sound, and then
Mhm.
and while you're in the ship during the destination, there's a certain moment in the piece where you hit a certain island, and you didn't expect to be the destination,
Yeah.
and then suddenly, and I think I mentioned this
That's
to
so
a friend of
cool.
mine.
I love how much you thought about this. It's amazing.
And then of course, the way I hear it is like, and apparently you went to the wrong island, so you
Right.
wanted to go to a particular island, so you had to get back into the ship again, and then instead of stopping, you started,
That's
and
cool. Yeah,
you're
I
heading
can't see that.
towards.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the looking glass is a metaphor of the pirate when you're looking through the glass. It's like a metaphor. So
Right.
this is the more definitive storytelling that I
Hmm.
could hear from the piece of music that you've created in this
That's
piece.
cool.
and it builds and it builds, and then towards the resolution, it's towards the resolution. The resolution is there. The most enjoyable part of this is that as the music progresses, you have this ability to push during the technical stuff and the analysis. Is you have this ability of, you have that moving groove kind of thing, and you have the
Right.
ability to push the story and create that, and then you have this ability to transition, and usually for musicians, it's very hard
Yeah,
to
yeah.
transition back into the stuff.
Oh yeah. That was cool actually. Because I was playing to like obviously record a drum track, and then so I had to just like leave an arbitrary gap in the drum track, and I just had to like guess how long I'd be playing that slow part on the piano for. And then it took me so many takes, I had to make sure I came back in at the right time with the drum. So yeah, it's quite difficult.
And the way you built this up, by the way, in the first, I'm very bad in the maths here. I, I'm trying my best to give the perfect analysis of this, but in the journey of this traveling, as we travel towards a destination, when the guitar comes in, there's this sign of hope that comes up.
Mm.
I don't know how I can describe it, but it's like either a mermaid or something in the ocean
Yeah.
that the journey of the ship is heading towards, and it's like a sign of hope, and it's like a brief moment, or it's like a dolphin or anything that's traveling with you in the ship.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's how I
definitely.
feel.
It's just like a nice little positive, hopeful bit, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's beautifully it's very genius how it's created and it's put
Oh.
together with regards to what's thing. Although yeah, they all have their own separate timelines of creation, but it's genius. And yeah,
Oh, thanks, Rajiv. That's so kind of you.
honestly, pal, one thing I want to say is, initially on the Rajiv show, I wanted to do an analysis of this album. I wanted to do the analysis, and I wanted to make this whole analysis for those who are tuning in, but unfortunately for YouTube, they will demonetize my content and all this what stuff. That's why it's kind of sad. So yeah, but in a nutshell, these are the thoughts when I sit down and I listen to your discography, and I'm always looking forward to listen to your stuff.
Yeah. I was just saying that I really appreciate what you said. And yeah, I had loads of fun writing this album. I guess I probably don't give it enough credit, but I don't. One thing I do like about it is that I wrote it from a very like honest place. Like I wasn't trying to be anyone other than me, which I think is a really good thing. So I like that when I listen to it, I can hear like, oh yeah, that's like exactly what I was like when I was that age. So I kind of want to get back into writing music like that, I think.
Wow, I love this conversation. I mean, this conversation is one that I've been waiting for since 2020.
It's been so fun.
And I just hope that I get to catch up with you again and book a conversation with you and just have a glass of wine or Coke or Pepsi.
Yeah, let's do it.
Hopefully, when this pandemic comes down and then you can come down to the Philippines, I'd be your host. And I want to digest stuff from you and learn from you. And from the moment I created this series, I knew that at some point this was this is like my biggest project that I've ever done. I've never crossed the threshold of 50 yet. So as of the release of this episode, so I never expected to hit the 50th episode or to even go even further. So
that's amazing.
And I always wanted my 50th guest to be Robert Dimbleby. From the moment I sent you a message, I thought it was gonna be hard to get you. It's probably like trying to get Gary Vaynerchuk. But yeah.
I'm just really bad at replying to messages. Like I'm not really as busy as it seems. I'm just terrible at replying to things. I just forget to check my messages. So but yeah, I'm so glad that we finally made this happen.
Yeah, and I'm grateful. At least we perfectly timed it, because prior to this recording, I wanted to make sure the content that we're gonna talk about would be relevant to what we're gonna talk about. So yeah, and I wanted it to be fun.
Definitely.
I also gotta ask, pal, as a fan, for my listeners, and I'm sure they listen to you and also will be a fan of yours, I gotta ask you, when is the next album release? When is the full album release to be expected?
Well,
since
I'm planning to release an EP.
You mentioned September.
I know an EP isn't a full length thing. It's probably going to be 4 tunes, because I've been experimenting with singing and writing lyrics for the past year or so. So I've written a few songs that I really want to release, but I'm just sitting on them, to be honest. I need to mix them, but they're pretty much all done, and I'm just sitting on them thinking like, shall I release them or shall I wait a bit? But yeah, so in the next couple of months, hopefully I'll release them on Spotify
prior to September. Guys, follow him on Spotify.
I should get my act together and just release it. Yeah.
Yeah, and wow, this has been a blast. I mean, Matt's teaching. There's so much more we should have covered, but the only mission that I had in my head was to cover the change of scene and to hopefully have to book you again on another conversation.
Yeah,
but of course, to wrap up this conversation. Awesome. Just to wrap up this conversation, of course, my listeners would love to connect with you via social media. How would they find you on social media, pal?
I think all of my handles are just Robert Dimbleby, all one word. So if you type that into Instagram, that should come up, and then YouTube as well. and Facebook. I think I've got a Facebook page, which is also just my name, Robert Dimbleby. So relatively easy to find. I don't post particularly often. I'm trying to get into posting more, but I'm trying to stay off social media because it sucks all your time up, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
but yeah, definitely follow me, and hopefully new music will be coming in the next few months or so in the form of songs with singing. So yeah.
Awesome. As it's a huge honor to have you on my show, pal. And it's an amazing feeling to have you on my show. And to me, to reach 50th episode, to reach the episode and to have you is a huge honor, pal.
No, thanks so much for getting in touch, and it's been really fun.
Yeah. And hopefully, I've lost my chops in music. I would love to jam with you sometime. Hopefully, we can make that happen. Hopefully, we can make that happen.
We should try and make that happen. That would be fun.
So, thank you so much, Robert Dimbleby. For those who are tuning in, cheers, folks. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Uh, Happy 50th episode. Hashtag happy 50th episode. Cheers, folks,
Yeah.
for listening to the Rajiv show. And I will see you in the next episode. Cheers.